All right, just a quick video here. Just going to go on, rant on various topics. So one thing I want to talk about that I just find amusing to me is how people pretend, oh, America, is a nation of the free and the liberated. It's like, okay, but, don't you people have to go to the government for permission to do anything? Like, say, for instance, you can't own this, plot of land over here. You can't own this vehicle without getting a permit. You can't work this job over here without telling the government how much money that you're making so you can pay your fair share of taxes. Let's not forget about that, everybody. Let's not forget about that. Let's talk about the American history where, 200 some years ago or whatever, the Americans rioted about having to pay, a 4% tax on tea. But now today, everybody's paying, 30% or more in taxes to the government. And everybody takes pride in paying their fair due. Like, oh, how dare somebody, not pay the state, their fair due. Oh, that's a tax cheat. It's like, okay, well, what is the government doing with this money that they're taking from you by taxation, which, by the way, is just fraud? It's nothing but a mafia gang. They're basically telling people, well, hey, look, you have to give us money, or, the thugs, which are, these enforcers, right? These police will come over, and forcibly, make you pay, or, you'll get something even worse to happen. You know what I'm saying? So like, how is that a force of good right there? Like, they're literally telling you, well, you have to do this or that, or there will be a punishment. Well, first of all, in a free country, how could anybody tell you what you can and can't do? Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, somebody sent me a what was it, like an email link to some like document where Congress was saying, oh yeah, well, we determined, in sometime in December of 2026, we declared that it's mandatory that every male that's eligible, right, between 18 and like 30 something, has to serve in the military. If there's ever a need, right, there'll be some type of nationwide draft that everybody will have to conform to without question, without regulation, right? Without question, anybody who dares to dodge it will be punished, or thrown in jail, if not even worse. And I think to myself, well, hold up a second. Well, if America was really a free country, which you dumb people believe, well, how can somebody force you to do something against your own will? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a nation of freedom or liberty. That's a authoritarian country where the government can tell you, well, you have to do this, you have to do that, or this other thing over here is mandatory. It's like, okay, but that's not freedom. That's an authoritarian country. They tell you, you have to do this or you'll be punished. Like, is that not what Russia does? Is that not what China does? Is that not what's going on in, say, Iran, for example? I would argue the same thing's going on in America too. I would argue the same thing's going on over here. Got a lot of dumb, naive clowns out there, like Mr. Jill, for example. He's like, oh, praise Trump. Trump's like some type of savior. Like, like, it wouldn't surprise me if this, knucklehead buffoon believes in like the 2016 Trump prophecy that Christians were on YouTube talking about. Oh, well, God chose Trump to, save the whole world, right? God chose Trump to save the whole world. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell? And, part of me thinks that Trump believes that himself. You know why? Because oh, damn, there's some flies and shit out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a little side note here, but, it's like these creatures have the entire, field open to themselves. Thousands of miles of wide open land. But, of course, they have to, bother us when we're, just sitting here minding our own business. You know what I'm saying? Ridiculous. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, I believe Trump believes in the prophecy himself. Well, so-called prophecy, because it's really a lie. But if you don't know what it was, right, they said back in 2016, Christians were saying that, Trump was saved and ordained by God to, like, save America from, his downfall or whatever. But then if you fast forward to recently, like 2 years ago, in Butler, PA, where, somebody, attacked him, and he was spared by, like, what, 1 inch? Right, the bullet went in his ear, missed his head. But he said in his his like what do you call it, interview, or TV presence afterward, he said, yeah, I believe that God, has spared my life, to better this nation. So hell, I believe that Trump believes in the prophecy. That wouldn't surprise me. That when this dude's taking his bathroom break, he's searching his name up on Google and seeing shit that people are saying about him. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I just find that to be pathetic and just strange to me. Like, I'll give you another example. Like, recently, I went to the local, like, gas station to get myself, a couple of beers, right? So I walked in there. My younger brother came in with me because he needed to get, like, a snack or something. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we walk in together. I show him, oh, look over there. There's such and such thing you were telling me about the other day. So that, he checks out, he does what he has to do, and I tell him, yeah, man, wait outside for me. I'll be there in like 5 minutes after I get my, drink or whatnot. So 5 minutes later, I go up to the counter with my beer. And by the way, I'm by myself, looking to purchase it with my hard-earned money. And the person at the counter tells me, oh, well, sorry, man, I seen that you, came in here with somebody that looks younger, so I have to scan both of your IDs then. Now, typically, this place wouldn't even ask for mine, because they can just look at me and say, oh, okay, well, yeah, he's obviously over 21, which, by the way, is a retarded and ridiculous belief that nobody believed for 99% of human history, but I'll leave it at that for now. But they were telling me, well, yeah, man, you're either going to have to, scan both of your cards or I can't give it to you. I was saying to myself, you know what? F your store policies, and and F you too, and I told him, hey, look, see this bitch, you can go put the products back on the shelf yourself, right? I'm not going to put it back there for your weak ass. You go put it there yourself, bitch. And that's just the way it is. But think about that. How are you going to tell me what I can and can't do with my hard-earned money? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a nation of liberty and freedom. I call that a nation of oppression. And that's what I criticize America as. This is not a free nation. Pete dummies say, oh, well, you can, say what you want in America. Well, is that really true? Because as far as I know, if you talk shit on like Instagram or Facebook, they'll flag your post, right? Like, there was some dude that said something like negative about Trump, and they sent like, police to this man's house over, some dumb post that he put up about Trump. Or what about on YouTube? Oh, you can't say certain words, right? You can't talk about certain words on YouTube, or you'll get your video flagged down. Like, what the hell? How am I gonna get a video flagged down for using certain words? I thought that this was a quote-unquote free country where I have the right to say what's on my mind. But apparently that is not true. And this is not like something that's, brand new that just happened recently. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, this is not something new that's just recently happened within recent months. I mean, I would argue this has been going on for, well over a decade on the internet, if not longer than that. People being clearly censored for certain, things that they're talking about on their post or, YouTube videos. Right? YouTube will secretly flag down your videos, violation of this, violation of that. Now, it's ridiculous. But you know what? First of all, I bet you Americans don't even know this, that, well, for one, America has the world's highest prison population of over 4 million people at any given time. It says a lot, doesn't it? Like, China doesn't beat America as far as its prison population, which, by the way, if you didn't know, China has a population of 1.4 billion people. America only has 4% of the Earth's population living here, which is roughly 350 million people. So think about that real quick. Not even China or India, which have a population of 1.4 billion people, they don't even have a bigger prison population compared to the United States. So this is like such a free nation, all freedom and, all such freedom that everybody's going to be screaming on July 4th. Well, why the hell are there 4 million people behind bars for dumbass reasons? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? Like, whoa, wait a second. That's not a nation of freedom or liberty. I'll give you another example. Do you know how, like, laws and regulations are made in America? Basically, they get a couple of guys, they call them senators or congressmen or, lawmakers, give them different terms they address them by. But they can just throw a couple ideas back and forth, they call it a bill. And then if enough of them agree on it, right, they'll take a vote, enough of them agree, they'll send it off to the president. If he signs his name on it, that becomes law. So now everybody has to abide and follow that, or you'll be punished to varying degrees. But my point of the matter is this, is that is a authoritarian country. There's a small group of people who are in charge, calling all the shots, and everybody bows to them and kisses their ass like a bunch of gullible slaves. And that's what I criticize modern day America. That's what I criticize America as. You know, this is not a nation of liberty or freedom, but most people out here are willful slaves to the God called government, and their every will and decree. You know, the Bible talks about, like in Revelation, the 13th chapter, about this great beast that would rule over the earth in the end times, right? And it talked about, you know, he will force everybody to take a mark in their hand or in the forehead, which, if you didn't know, that's talking about the RFID microchip and this Neuralink technology. Look that up if you don't know about it. But interesting fact, though, right? It talks about the image of the beast, right? He made an image to the first beast before him, which had a wound by a sword but did live, and he caused all to bow to that image and worship it. Well, let's explain that real quick. Who's the first beast? Well, the first beast was the Roman Empire. Rome fell, but then they came back in modern day as the United States. Right? America is Roman reincarnation today. I mean, there's so many comparables between the Roman Empire and the United States. If I say, for instance, American law, you have to know Roman numerology to know that. The political structure of this nation is set up just like the Roman Empire was. Rome had the Flavians and the Patricians. America has the Republicans and the Democrats. Same voting political system. The governmental structures, right, like the, you know, courthouses and, you know, White House and all that, it's decorated how ancient Rome was, right? Like, you know, the white pillars and all that, white marble. You know, we can keep going on and on and on, but all the comparisons between ancient Rome and America, right? So America made an image to the first beast, right? And everybody has to bow before her. Well, as far as the image of the beast, I would say, on one hand, it's talking about like this political legal system, right? Everybody has to bow to the government and kiss their ass on every will and every demand without question. That's the image of the beast. And I'll give you a bonus example. The American flag is also part of the image of the beast. Everybody has to bow. Some people bow to their knees to the flag. Some people, you know, put their hand to their heart and swear their allegiance to the beast in his image. And anybody who dares to not salute this man's image and flag, you know, you'll be demonized, you'll be criticized, you'll be jailed, you know, all these various things. You know, like I seen that Trump was talking about maybe a year or two ago, saying, hey, you know, well, you know, if anybody goes out and, you know, does anything to a U.S. flag, you know, hey, we might put that guy in jail. You know, I might declare that's now the rules. You know, if you know, burn a flag at a protest, or, you know, if you drop it on the floor or whatever, oh, you know, you might go to jail for that now. Right? So everybody must bow to the beast in his image. Some of you might remember back to 2017, that what were these guys? The NFL players, they took a kneel to the American anthem and flag, and everybody was hating on them. They lost contracts, they lost millions of fans, they lost millions of dollars. Why? It was all because they took a kneel to the flag. They didn't believe in what it stood for. They saw the corruption that was going on, you know, in the, you know, day and day life to, you know, the Negro, Latino, and Native American, which are, you know, the true Israelites according to the Bible, right? They saw the corruption and they didn't want to stand with what it said. But the point of the matter is that, bear with me a second. My apology, I'm not sure where I left off here. I gotta get moving. There's clouds rolling my way here. But yeah, you know, my point still stands, right? My point is still evident, man. That, you know, everybody out here is just a weak sucker out here. Everybody's just kissing the government's ass because they say so. Oh, well, this thing over here, they declare these are now the rules, so we all obey them. It's like, okay, so, like, I'll give you an example. Like 9 years ago, you could go purchase tobacco products when you're 18. But now today, you know, 8 or 9 years later, everybody thinks that's weird and strange to try to purchase tobacco when you're 18. Oh, well, now it has to be 21. Well, why do you think that, if you don't mind me asking? Do you believe that because the government just made that up and told you? And your weak ass believes them because they're lying to you, and you're not really bright enough to figure that out? Or do you have like any type of scientific reason of why you believe that? I would argue with you that you just believe that because you're dumb and naive, and you're just a gullible ass kisser. And that's what I criticize Americans as. You're not a nation of weak men. I mean, excuse me, you're not a nation of free men. You're a nation of weak men. Right? A bunch of, ballless boys and lesbos out here is what I criticize Americans as. I think that's evident to see for anybody who has, half a brain out here, to, think for themselves. But anyway, I'm not going to make this too drawn out. I'll wrap the video up there.